The dust from Clara Foster's worn boots hung in the air behind her as she stumbled through the saloon doors of Valentine, Nebraska, one hand clutching her stomach and the other gripping the small leather bag that contained everything she owned in this world. It was July of 1878, and the heat pressed down on the prairie town like a physical weight, but Clara barely noticed the sweat trickling down her spine or the way her vision blurred at the edges from exhaustion and hunger. She had been running for 3 weeks now, ever since she realized that Marcus had figured out her secret, and the memory of his rage when he discovered the truth still made her hands shake. The saloon was cooler inside, though not by much, and Clara made her way to the bar on unsteady legs. The barkeep looked her over with a mixture of pity and suspicion, taking in her dusty traveling dress and the hollow look in her eyes. "Water, please," she managed to say, her voice hoarse from the long journey. She had come all the way from Kansas City, traveling by whatever means she could find, hiding in wagons and walking when she had no other choice. The pregnancy was just starting to show if you knew where to look, a small swell beneath the loose fabric of her dress that she tried desperately to conceal. The barkeep slid a glass of water across the scarred wooden surface, and Clara drank it down so fast she nearly choked. "Thank you," she whispered, setting the empty glass down with trembling fingers. "You looking for work?" the barkeep asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Clara nodded, unable to speak around the lump in her throat. She had been a seamstress back in Kansas City, skilled with a needle and thread, but she knew that no one would hire a woman alone without references, especially one who might be carrying a child. The shame of it burned in her chest, even though she knew she had nothing to be ashamed of. Marcus had promised to marry her, had sworn his love and devotion, right up until the moment she told him about the baby. Then his face had changed, transforming from the charming man she thought she knew into something cruel and violent. "I do not think anyone is hiring right now," the barkeep said, not unkindly. "Times are tough." Clara felt tears prick at her eyes, but she blinked them back furiously. She could not afford to break down now, not when she had come so far. She had to stay strong, for the baby if nothing else. The saloon doors swung open again, and Clara glanced up to see a tall man step inside, his silhouette backlit by the harsh afternoon sun. He moved with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in his own skin, and as he approached the bar, Clara noticed the way other patrons nodded to him respectfully. He wore dusty work clothes and a hat that had seen better days, and there was something solid and dependable about his presence that made Clara feel both safer and more acutely aware of her own vulnerability. "Afternoon, Aaron," the barkeep said, already reaching for a bottle. "Afternoon, Tom." The man called Aaron had a deep voice, warm like honey, and when he glanced at Clara, his eyes were a startling shade of blue that seemed to see right through her carefully constructed defenses. "You all right, miss?" Clara straightened her spine, trying to gather the tattered remains of her dignity. "I am fine, thank you." Aaron studied her for a long moment, and Clara had the uncomfortable feeling that he could see exactly how not fine she really was. His last name was Williams, she would learn later, and he ran a ranch about 5 miles outside of town with his younger brother. He was 27 years old, had never been married, and had a reputation for being fair-minded and honest in all his dealings. "She is looking for work," Tom the barkeep offered, wiping down the bar with a rag that had seen better days. Aaron took a sip of his drink, still watching Clara with those penetrating blue eyes. "What kind of work?" "I am a seamstress," Clara said, lifting her chin. "I can sew, mend, and do needlework. I can also cook and clean if needed." She hated the desperation she could hear creeping into her own voice, but there was no helping it. She needed money, needed a place to stay where Marcus could not find her. "My ranch could use someone to help with mending," Aaron said slowly. "The hands are hard on their clothes, and neither my brother nor I have much skill with a needle. There is a small cabin on the property that you could use if you wanted. It is not much, but it is clean and dry." Clara felt her heart leap in her chest, hope flaring so bright it almost hurt. "I would be very grateful for the opportunity, sir." "The name is Aaron Williams," he said, extending his hand. "And you are Clara Foster," she replied, shaking his hand. His grip was firm but gentle, his palm calloused from hard work. She tried to ignore the way her skin tingled where they touched, tried to tell herself it was just relief and exhaustion making her feel this way. "When can you start?" "Right now, if you need me to." Aaron nodded, finishing his drink. "I will take you out to the ranch then." "Do you have any belongings?" Clara held up her small leather bag. "This is everything." Something flickered in Aaron's eyes, something that might have been sympathy or understanding, but he did not press her for details. Instead, he simply said, "Come on then. The wagon is outside." The ride out to the ranch took about 40 minutes, and Clara spent most of it trying not to sway too obviously with the motion of the wagon. She felt lightheaded from the heat and the lack of proper food, but she forced herself to stay upright, to maintain the appearance of strength, even though she felt like she might shatter at any moment. Aaron did not push her to talk, which she appreciated. Instead, he pointed out landmarks as they passed, telling her about the town and the surrounding area in that warm, easy voice of his. Valentine had been founded about 10 years earlier, he explained, and had grown steadily as more ranchers and farmers moved into the region. It was a good town for the most part, with good people who looked after their own. The ranch itself was larger than Clara had expected, with a sturdy house, several outbuildings, and corrals full of horses and cattle. The cabin Aaron had mentioned sat about 100 yards from the main house, small and whitewashed, with a wooden porch and a single window that looked out over the prairie. "It is not fancy," Aaron said as he helped her down from the wagon, his hands warm and solid on her waist. "But it should suit your needs." "It is perfect," Clara said, and she meant it. The cabin was more than she had dared to hope for, a safe place where she could rest and hide until she figured out what to do next. Aaron showed her inside, pointing out the small stove, the narrow bed with its clean quilts, and the table and chairs by the window. There was a trunk for her belongings and hooks on the wall for hanging clothes. It was simple and sparse, but it felt like a palace to Clara after weeks of sleeping rough. "I will have one of the hands bring you some water and firewood," Aaron said. "Meals are served at the main house, but if you prefer to cook for yourself, you are welcome to. Just let me know what you need from town, and I will make sure you have supplies." "Thank you," Clara whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You have no idea what this means to me." Aaron looked at her for a long moment, his blue eyes searching her face. "You are running from something," he said quietly. It was not a question. Clara felt her stomach drop, panic flaring hot and sharp in her chest. "I do not know what you mean." "I am not going to pry," Aaron said, holding up his hands. "Your business is your own. I just want you to know that you are safe here. No one is going to hurt you on my property." The tears Clara had been holding back finally spilled over, tracking hot lines down her dusty cheeks. She turned away, mortified, but Aaron simply placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Take some time to rest," he said. "You look like you have been through hell and back. We can talk about the work tomorrow." He left then, closing the door softly behind him, and Clara sank down onto the bed and let herself cry for the first time since she had fled Kansas City. She cried for the life she had lost, for the man she thought Marcus had been, for the terror of the past 3 weeks and the fear of what the future might hold. But underneath all of that, there was a tiny spark of hope, fragile as a candle flame in the wind. Maybe, just maybe, she had found a place where she could be safe. Over the next few days, Clara settled into a routine at the ranch. She woke early, before the heat of the day set in, and made her way to the main house where Aaron's brother, a young man named Peter who could not have been more than 21, served breakfast to the ranch hands. Peter was friendly and talkative, completely different from Aaron's quiet intensity, and he seemed delighted to have another person around to chat with. The work itself was not difficult, though there was a lot of it. The ranch hands were indeed hard on their clothes, and Clara spent her days mending torn shirts, patching worn trousers, and sewing buttons back onto vests. She set up her workspace on the porch of her cabin, where she could catch the breeze and watch the life of the ranch unfold around her. Aaron came by every afternoon to check on her progress, and Clara found herself looking forward to these visits more than she wanted to admit. He would sit on the porch steps, his hat in his hands, and they would talk about simple things while she worked. He told her about the ranch, about the cattle drives and the challenges of making a living on the prairie. She told him carefully edited stories about her life before, leaving out the parts about Marcus and the baby and the desperate flight across 2 states. But Clara could tell that Aaron knew she was hiding something. He was too perceptive, too observant, to miss the way she sometimes pressed a hand to her stomach when she thought no one was looking, or the way she turned pale and had to sit down suddenly. He never called her on it, though, never pushed her to reveal more than she was ready to share. It was nearly 2 weeks before Clara felt the first real flutter of movement in her belly, unmistakable proof of the life growing inside her. She was alone in her cabin at the time, and she sat very still with her hand pressed to her stomach, tears streaming down her face. This baby was not a mistake, no matter what Marcus had said. This baby was hers, and she would love it and protect it with everything she had. The next afternoon, when Aaron came to check on her work, Clara made a decision. She could not keep hiding forever, and Aaron had been nothing but kind to her. He deserved to know the truth, or at least part of it. "Aaron," she said, setting down the shirt she had been mending, "I need to tell you something." He looked up from the piece of leather he had been examining, his blue eyes steady and calm. "All right." Clara took a deep breath, her heart hammering in her chest. "I am with child," she said, the words coming out in a rush. "I am not married, and the father does not want anything to do with the baby or me. That is why I came to Valentine. I needed somewhere safe to hide." Aaron was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Clara held her breath, waiting for the disgust or the anger or the disappointment that she had learned to expect when people found out about unmarried pregnant women. But when Aaron finally spoke, his voice was gentle. "How far along are you?" "About 3 months," Clara whispered. "Maybe a little more. And the father? Is he looking for you?" Clara nodded, unable to speak around the fear that closed up her throat. Marcus was not the kind of man to let go of something he considered his property, even if he did not want it himself. She had no doubt that he was searching for her, that he would be furious when he found her. "What is his name?" Aaron asked. "Marcus. Marcus Bennett. He is a businessman in Kansas City, well-connected and wealthy." Clara twisted her hands together in her lap. "He told me he loved me, that we would be married. But when I told him about the baby, he said terrible things. He said I had trapped him, that the baby probably was not even his. He hit me." She touched her cheek unconsciously, remembering the sting of his hand. "I ran that night. I took what little money I had saved and left." Aaron's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping in his cheek. "He will not touch you here," he said, and there was steel in his voice. "I give you my word on that." I should leave, Clara said, tears spilling down her cheeks. I've put you in danger just by being here. If Marcus finds me, he might hurt you or your brother or the ranch hands. You are not going anywhere, Aaron said firmly. He moved closer, kneeling in front of her chair so he could look her in the eyes. Listen to me, Clara. You are safe here. I will not let anyone hurt you or your baby. Do you understand? But why? Clara asked, bewildered. Why would you risk so much for me? You barely know me. Aaron reached out and gently wiped away her tears with his thumb. The gesture was so tender that it made Clara's heart ache. Because it is the right thing to do, he said simply. And because I have come to care about you more than I probably should. Clara stared at him, her breath catching in her throat. She had not imagined the connection between them, the way her heart beat faster when he was near, the way she felt safer and more grounded in his presence than she had in months. But she had told herself it was impossible, that no man would want a woman carrying another man's child. Aaron, she whispered, but she did not know what else to say. He smiled at her, a slow, warm smile that made something flutter in her chest. You do not have to say anything right now, he said. Just know that you have a place here for as long as you need it. And when that baby comes, I will help you raise it. I will be a father to it, if you will let me. The words hung in the air between them, so unexpected and so precious that Clara could hardly believe she had heard them correctly. You would do that? She asked, her voice barely audible. I would, Aaron said, and she could see the truth of it in his eyes. I will raise it as my own. Clara broke down then, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. Aaron pulled her into his arms, holding her close while she cried against his chest. He was solid and warm and strong, and Clara felt something inside her that had been clenched tight with fear finally begin to loosen. Thank you, she gasped out between sobs. Thank you so much. SHH, Aaron murmured, stroking her hair. You do not have to thank me. We are going to be all right, Clara. All three of us. The days that followed were some of the happiest Clara could remember. She continued her work mending clothes for the ranch hands, but now there was a lightness to her steps that had not been there before. Aaron spent more time at her cabin, and they talked for hours about everything and nothing. She learned that he had come to Nebraska with his family when he was just a boy, that his parents had died in a cholera outbreak 5 years earlier, leaving him and Peter to run the ranch alone. He had worked hard to build it into something successful, pouring all his energy into the land and the livestock. In turn, Clara told him about her own childhood in Ohio, about her mother who had taught her to sew and her father who had died when she was 12. She told him about moving to Kansas City to work as a seamstress, about the dreams she had once had of opening her own shop. She even told him about Marcus, about how charming he had seemed at first, how he had slowly revealed his true nature only after she had fallen in love with him. I should have seen the signs, Clara said one evening as they sat on her porch watching the sun set over the prairie. The way he would get angry over small things, the way he always had to be in control, but I was so lonely and he made me feel special. It is not your fault, Aaron said firmly. Men like that are good at hiding what they really are. You could not have known. Clara leaned her head against his shoulder, breathing in the scent of leather and horses and sun-warmed skin. I am glad I came here, she said softly. Even with everything that happened, I am glad. Aaron pressed a kiss to the top of her head, and Clara felt her heart swell with an emotion she was almost afraid to name. This was not how she had imagined falling in love would be, pregnant with another man's child and hiding from a violent past. But somehow, sitting here with Aaron as the sky turned gold and pink above the endless prairie, it felt exactly right. As summer turned to fall, Clara's pregnancy became more obvious. The loose dresses she wore could no longer hide the swell of her belly, and she moved more slowly, her back aching from the extra weight. Aaron was constantly at her side, helping her with tasks that had become difficult, making sure she ate properly and got enough rest. He brought her wildflowers from the prairie and books from town to pass the time. He built a cradle for the baby, carving intricate designs into the wood by lamplight in his own house, and then bringing it to her cabin with shy pride. The ranch hands all knew about the baby by now, but none of them said anything unkind. Aaron had made it clear that Clara was under his protection, and the men respected him too much to cross him. Peter was especially excited about the coming baby, already planning all the things he would teach the child when they got older. But Clara's happiness was shadowed by a constant, gnawing fear. What if Marcus found her? What if he came to Valentine and tried to take her back to Kansas City, or worse, tried to take the baby? She had nightmares about it sometimes, waking in the dark with her heart pounding and her hands pressed protectively over her stomach. One night in late September, the nightmares were so bad that Clara could not get back to sleep. She lit a candle and sat at her small table, trying to calm her racing thoughts. She did not hear the knock at first, soft and hesitant, but then it came again and she called out, "Who is there?" "It is me," Aaron's voice came from the other side of the door. "I saw your light. Are you all right?" Clara opened the door to find Aaron standing on her porch in his nightshirt and trousers, his hair mussed from sleep. He looked younger like this, less guarded, and Clara felt a rush of affection so strong it took her breath away. "I could not sleep," she admitted. "Nightmares again." Aaron stepped inside without asking permission, closing the door behind him. "About Marcus?" Clara nodded, wrapping her arms around herself. "I keep thinking he is going to find me, that he is going to take the baby or hurt you or destroy everything good I have found here." "Clara," Aaron said, moving closer until he was standing right in front of her. "Look at me." She raised her eyes to his, seeing the determination and the tenderness there. "I am not going to let anything happen to you or the baby," Aaron said. "I mean that. If Marcus comes here, he will have to go through me first, and I promise you that is not going to be easy for him." "I do not want you to get hurt because of me," Clara whispered. "I know," Aaron said, "but I need you to understand something. I love you, Clara. I have loved you since the day you walked into Tom's saloon looking like you were about to fall over. I love your strength and your courage and the way you keep going even when everything seems impossible. And I love that baby too, even though it is not mine by blood. In every way that matters, you are both mine now, and I protect what is mine." Clara felt tears spill down her cheeks, but these were happy tears, born of joy and relief and a love so overwhelming she thought she might burst with it. "I love you too," she said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I have been so afraid to say it, so afraid that it was too soon or that I was being foolish, but I love you, Aaron Williams. I love you so much." Aaron cupped her face in his hands and kissed her, gentle and sweet and full of promise. Clara melted into him, her arms coming up to wrap around his neck, the swell of her belly pressing against him. It was not a kiss of passion but of commitment, a vow spoken without words. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were smiling. "Marry me," Aaron said. "I know it is fast, and I know we have not known each other long, but I want to do this right. I want the baby to have my name, and I want everyone to know that you are mine and I am yours." "Yes," Clara said without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you." They were wed 3 days later in the small church in Valentine, with Peter as Aaron's best man and the preacher's wife standing up for Clara. It was a simple ceremony, but Clara had never felt more beautiful or more loved than she did standing at the altar in a dress she had sewn herself from fabric Aaron had bought in town. When Aaron slipped the simple gold band onto her finger, Clara felt the last of her fear finally slip away. She was Clara Williams now, and she had a husband who loved her and a home where she belonged. The baby came in early December, a cold night when the first snow of the season was falling soft and silent outside the cabin. Clara's labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when she thought she might not survive it. But Aaron was there the entire time, holding her hand and wiping her forehead with cool cloths and telling her how strong she was, how brave, how much he loved her. When the baby finally arrived, squalling and red-faced and perfect, Clara burst into tears of relief and joy. "Is it healthy?" she gasped out, exhausted beyond measure. "He is perfect," the midwife said, wrapping the baby in a soft blanket. "You have a son, Mrs. Williams." Aaron took the baby with shaking hands, his eyes wide with wonder. "A son," he repeated, his voice thick with emotion. He looked down at the tiny face, the small fists waving in the air, and Clara saw the moment when he fell completely and utterly in love. "Hello there, little man," Aaron whispered. "I am your papa, and I am going to take such good care of you, I promise." Clara held out her arms, and Aaron carefully placed the baby in them. She looked down at her son, at his tiny nose and his shock of dark hair and his beautiful, perfect face, and felt her heart expand until she thought it might burst. "We need to name him," she said, looking up at Aaron. "What do you think of Benjamin?" Aaron suggested, sitting on the edge of the bed beside her. "Ben for short. It was my father's name." "Benjamin Williams," Clara said, testing the name. "I love it. Hello, Benjamin. Welcome to the world, my sweet boy." The winter months passed in a blur of sleepless nights and endless feedings, and the overwhelming joy of being new parents. Benjamin was a good baby, all things considered, though he had a healthy set of lungs when he wanted something. Aaron was an attentive and loving father, changing diapers and walking the floor with Ben when he was fussy and singing lullabies in his deep voice that always seemed to soothe the baby. Clara watched her husband with their son and fell even more deeply in love with him. Aaron had kept his promise. He treated Benjamin as his own in every way, never once referring to the baby as anything other than his son. And Benjamin adored his father, his whole face lighting up whenever Aaron came into view. But Clara's happiness was shattered one cold afternoon in February when she went into town with Aaron to pick up supplies. They had just left the general store, Aaron carrying the packages and Clara holding Benjamin bundled in her arms when a familiar voice made her blood run cold. "Clara." She turned slowly, her heart hammering in her chest, to see Marcus Bennett standing in the middle of the street. He looked thinner than she remembered, his face harder, and there was a dangerous glint in his eyes that made her take an instinctive step backward. "Marcus," she whispered, pulling Benjamin closer. Aaron was at her side in an instant, setting down the packages and placing himself between Clara and Marcus. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice cold and flat. Marcus ignored him, his eyes fixed on Clara. "I have been looking for you for months," he said. "Do you have any idea what you put me through? The embarrassment when people started asking questions about where you had gone." "I do not care," Clara said, finding her voice. She could feel Aaron beside her, solid and protective, and it gave her strength. "You made it very clear that you did not want me or the baby, so I left." "That baby is mine," Marcus said, his voice rising. "You had no right to run off with it." "He is not yours," Aaron said, his tone deadly calm. "He is mine. Clara is my wife and Benjamin is my son. You have no claim on either of them." Marcus's eyes narrowed and he took a step forward. "She is lying to you," he said to Aaron. "That baby is mine and I am taking them both back to Kansas City where they belong." "No," Clara said firmly. "I am not going anywhere with you, Marcus. I am married now and I am happy. Please just leave us alone. "You stupid woman," Marcus snarled, lunging forward. "You think you can just walk away from me?" But he did not get far. Aaron moved with shocking speed, intercepting Marcus and grabbing him by the front of his coat. "You need to leave," Aaron said quietly. "Right now, before I do something we will both regret." "She is mine," Marcus shouted, struggling in Aaron's grip. "That baby is mine, and I will not let some ranch hand steal what belongs to me." Aaron's fist connected with Marcus's jaw with a sickening crack, and Marcus staggered backward, blood streaming from his split lip. Several townspeople had gathered to watch, and Clara saw the sheriff pushing his way through the crowd. "What is going on here?" the sheriff demanded, looking between Aaron and Marcus. "This man is harassing my wife," Aaron said, his voice hard. "He needs to leave town." Marcus wiped blood from his mouth, his eyes blazing with fury. "That woman is carrying my child," he said to the sheriff. "She ran away and I am here to bring her home." "The baby is not yours," Clara said loudly so everyone could hear. She was shaking, but she kept her voice steady. "You made it very clear that you wanted nothing to do with us when you hit me and called me terrible names. I left, and I married Aaron, and Benjamin is his son now. You have no right to be here." The sheriff looked at Clara, taking in the bruise that still lingered faintly on her cheekbone from where Marcus had struck her months ago. His expression hardened. "Is this true? Did this man strike you?" "Yes," Clara said. "He did." The sheriff turned to Marcus, his hand resting on the gun at his hip. "I think you had better leave Valentine, Mr. Bennett, and do not come back. If I see you around here again, I will arrest you for assault and harassment." "You cannot do this," Marcus protested. "That child is mine by blood." "I have rights." "You gave up those rights when you hit his mother," Aaron said coldly. "Benjamin is my son. My name is on his birth certificate, and if you ever come near my family again, I will not be as gentle as I was today." Marcus looked around at the gathered crowd, seeing no sympathy in any of the faces watching him. He was an outsider here, a man who had hurt a woman and abandoned his child, and the people of Valentine had no patience for men like that. "This is not over," Marcus said, but there was less conviction in his voice now. "Yes, it is," Aaron said. He put his arm around Clara's shoulders and gently guided her away, leaving Marcus standing in the street with the sheriff watching him carefully. Clara was shaking so hard she could barely walk, her arms locked tight around Benjamin. Aaron led her to the wagon and helped her up, his touch gentle and reassuring. "It is all right," he murmured. "He is gone. He cannot hurt you anymore." "What if he comes back?" Clara whispered. "What if he tries to take Benjamin?" "He will not," Aaron said firmly. "The sheriff made that clear. And even if he tried, he would have to get through me first, and Clara, I promise you, that man is a coward. He preys on women because they cannot fight back, but he will not stand up to a man who is willing to protect what is his." The ride back to the ranch seemed to take forever, and Clara spent the entire time pressed against Aaron's side. Benjamin clutched to her chest. When they finally arrived home, Aaron carried both of them into the house, setting Clara gently on the sofa and taking Benjamin so she could rest. "I am sorry," Clara said, tears streaming down her face. "I have brought so much trouble to you." "Stop," Aaron said, kneeling in front of her. "You have not brought me trouble. You have brought me joy and love and purpose. Benjamin is the best thing that has ever happened to me, and so are you. Do not ever apologize for that." Clara threw her arms around his neck, sobbing into his shoulder. Aaron held her close, one hand cradling Benjamin and the other stroking her hair, and Clara felt the terror of the day slowly begin to fade. Marcus was gone. The sheriff had made it clear he was not welcome in Valentine. And even if he did come back, Clara knew now that Aaron would protect them with everything he had. The next few weeks were tense, with Aaron constantly on alert for any sign of Marcus's return. But as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, it became clear that Marcus had truly given up. Perhaps the sheriff's warning had been enough, or perhaps Marcus had simply decided that Clara and the baby were not worth the trouble. Either way, he did not come back, and slowly, Clara began to relax and trust that they were truly safe. Spring arrived on the prairie with an explosion of green grass and wildflowers, and the ranch was busier than ever with new calves being born and fences needing repair. Benjamin was growing fast, already starting to smile and laugh, and he was the absolute center of both Aaron and Clara's world. Peter doted on his nephew, spending hours playing with him and making silly faces to get him to giggle. One warm May evening, Clara was sitting on the porch with Benjamin in her lap when Aaron came home from working with the cattle. He looked tired but happy, and he sank down onto the porch steps with a contented sigh. "It has been a good day," he said, tilting his face up to catch the last rays of the setting sun. "It has," Clara agreed. Benjamin was chewing on his fist, drooling contentedly, and she wiped his mouth with the corner of her apron. "I have been thinking," Aaron said, glancing back at her. "This cabin is getting a bit small for all of us. What would you say to adding on a couple of rooms, maybe a proper nursery for Ben and another bedroom for us?" Clara felt her heart swell with love. "I think that sounds wonderful," she said. "But Aaron, can we afford it?" "We can," Aaron assured her. "The ranch has been doing well and I have been saving. Besides, I want our son to have room to grow, and maybe, if we are lucky, he will have siblings to share it with someday." Clara felt her cheeks heat at the implication, but she smiled. "I would like that," she said softly. "I would like that very much." Aaron stood and came to sit beside her on the porch swing, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. Benjamin reached for him with a delighted squeal, and Aaron took him, settling the baby on his lap. "We are going to have a good life," he said, his voice full of conviction. "The three of us and however many more children we are blessed with. This is our home, Clara, our family, and nothing is ever going to take that away from us." Clara leaned her head on his shoulder, watching the sun sink below the horizon and paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. She thought about how far she had come since that desperate afternoon when she stumbled into the saloon in Valentine, pregnant and alone and terrified. She thought about the kindness Aaron had shown her, the way he had opened his home and his heart without asking for anything in return. And she thought about the future stretching out before them, full of promise and hope and love. "I love you," she whispered, pressing a kiss to his cheek. "I love you too," Aaron replied, turning to kiss her properly. Benjamin giggled between them, and they both laughed, pulling apart to look down at their son. "And we love you most of all, little man," Aaron said, tickling Benjamin's belly until he shrieked with laughter. As summer arrived once more on the Nebraska prairie, the Williams family settled into a comfortable rhythm. The addition to the cabin was completed by July, giving them more space and a beautiful nursery for Benjamin decorated with the same careful attention to detail that Aaron had put into the cradle. Clara filled the new rooms with quilts she had sewn and curtains she had made from fabric Aaron brought from town. The cabin truly felt like a home now, warm and welcoming and full of love. Benjamin continued to grow, reaching all his milestones on schedule and bringing endless joy to everyone around him. By his first birthday in December, he was starting to walk, wobbling around on unsteady legs and laughing when he fell. The whole ranch celebrated, with Peter baking a cake and the ranch hands bringing small gifts they had made or bought in town. Clara watched her son blow out his first birthday candle with tears in her eyes, remembering the terror and uncertainty of a year ago. How different things were now. How blessed she was. "What are you thinking about?" Aaron asked, slipping his arm around her waist. "Just how lucky I am," Clara said, leaning into him. "A year ago I did not know if we would survive, and now look at us. We have a beautiful home, a healthy son, and each other. It is more than I ever dared to dream of." "The best is yet to come," Aaron promised. And he was right. The following spring, Clara discovered she was pregnant again. This time there was no fear or shame, only pure joy. Aaron was thrilled, immediately becoming even more protective and attentive than he had been during her first pregnancy. Benjamin, now an energetic toddler, did not quite understand what was happening, but he seemed to sense the excitement in the air. The baby arrived in late October of 1880, another boy they named Samuel. He had Aaron's blue eyes and Clara's dark hair, and he was the perfect addition to their growing family. Benjamin was fascinated by his little brother, constantly wanting to help feed him or rock his cradle, and Aaron walked around with a permanent smile on his face. "Two boys," he said one night as they lay in bed, Samuel sleeping peacefully in his cradle and Benjamin snoring softly in the room next door. "I am the luckiest man alive." "We should probably wait a while before having another," Clara said, laughing softly. "Two is quite enough for now." But life had other plans. Just over a year later, Clara found herself pregnant for a third time. This pregnancy was more difficult than the previous two, with Clara suffering from terrible morning sickness and exhaustion. Aaron insisted she rest as much as possible, taking over many of the household duties and enlisting Peter's help with watching the boys. The baby arrived in the summer of 1882, and this time it was a girl. They named her Rose, and she was the most beautiful thing Clara had ever seen, with tiny rosebud lips and a shock of blonde hair that neither Aaron nor Clara could account for, until Aaron's grandmother's portrait was brought out from storage, showing a woman with the same golden locks. Benjamin and Samuel were both fascinated by their baby sister, treating her like a living doll. Benjamin, now nearly 4 years old, appointed himself her protector, while Samuel, at almost 2, simply wanted to poke her gently and watch her tiny fingers curl around his. The house was chaotic with 3 small children, full of noise and laughter and the occasional tantrum. But Clara had never been happier. She would stand at the kitchen window, watching Aaron teach Benjamin how to rope a fence post while Samuel toddled around the yard chasing chickens, and Rose slept peacefully in her cradle, and feel so full of love she thought she might burst. The years passed in a blur of birthdays and holidays and everyday moments that were somehow also extraordinary. Benjamin grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved reading and helping his father with the horses. Samuel was more rambunctious, always getting into mischief and making everyone laugh with his antics. Rose was the princess of the family, sweet and gentle and utterly adored by her older brothers and her father. When Benjamin turned 10 in 1886, he asked Aaron if he could start learning to work with the cattle. Aaron agreed, and Clara watched with pride and a touch of sadness as her eldest son began the transition from boy to young man. He was so much like Aaron, with the same quiet strength and steady reliability. Samuel, at 8, was more interested in the horses than the cattle, spending hours in the barn currying them and learning their personalities. He had a gift for it, Aaron said, a natural way with animals that could not be taught. Rose, at 6, was still too young for ranch work, but she helped Clara with cooking and sewing, already showing a talent for needlework that rivaled her mother's. She was also the apple of Peter's eye, and Uncle Peter spoiled her shamelessly, bringing her ribbons from town and carving her elaborate wooden toys. One evening in the fall of 1886, Clara and Aaron sat on their porch watching the sunset, as they had done countless times over the past 8 years. The children were inside, Benjamin helping Samuel with his reading while Rose played with her dolls. It was a peaceful moment, the kind that Clara had learned to treasure. You ever think about what your life would have been like if you had not come to Valentine? Aaron asked, his arm around her shoulders. Clara considered the question carefully. Sometimes, she admitted, but I try not to dwell on it. That life, the one I was living in Kansas City, was not really a life at all. I was so lonely and so lost. Coming here, finding you, it saved me. You saved yourself, Aaron said. You were the one who had the courage to leave, to start over, to trust me when you had every reason not to trust any man. We saved each other, Clara said, taking his hand. You gave me a home and a family and a love I never thought I would have. And I hope I have given you the same. You have given me everything, Aaron said, bringing her hand to his lips. A wife, children, a reason to wake up every morning. I was just existing before you came along, Clara. You taught me how to really live. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the sounds of the prairie and their children's voices drifting through the open window. Clara thought about the woman she had been 8 years ago, desperate and pregnant and terrified. She thought about the man Aaron had been, lonely and hardworking and kind. And she thought about the family they had built together, the life they had created from nothing but hope and determination and love. We should probably think about finding a bigger house soon, Aaron said eventually. The cabin is getting crowded with 5 of us. I like the cabin, Clara protested. It is where we started our life together. I like it too, Aaron agreed, but the children are growing and they need space. I was thinking we could build a proper ranch house, something with enough bedrooms for everyone and maybe even a parlor for entertaining. We could keep the cabin, though, use it for guests or storage. Clara nodded slowly. All right, she said. If you think it is time. I do, Aaron said. I want to give you and the children the best life possible. And that means a house big enough for all of us, with room to grow. Construction on the new house began the following spring, and by the fall of 1887, it was complete. It was a beautiful 2-story structure with 4 bedrooms, a large kitchen, a dining room, and a parlor with big windows that looked out over the prairie. Clara cried the first time she walked through it, overwhelmed by the reality of how far they had come. The children loved the new house, each claiming their own bedroom with delight. Benjamin chose the room with the best view of the corrals so he could watch the horses. Samuel picked the one closest to his parents' room because he still sometimes had nightmares. Rose wanted the room with the morning sun because she liked to wake up early and watch the sunrise. They moved in just before Thanksgiving, and Clara insisted on hosting a big dinner to celebrate. She invited the ranch hands, Peter of course, and several families from town who had become friends over the years. The house was full of laughter and good food and warmth, and as Clara looked around at the faces of the people she loved, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. That night, after everyone had gone home and the children were asleep in their new rooms, Aaron pulled Clara into his arms in the kitchen. "Happy?" he asked. "More than I can say," Clara replied, standing on her toes to kiss him. "Thank you for all of this. For the house, for the children, for the life we have built together. Thank you for saying yes when I asked you to marry me," Aaron said. "Thank you for trusting me with your heart and your son. Thank you for every single day of the past 8 years." They swayed together in the dim light of the kitchen. No music but the beating of their hearts, and Clara thought that this, right here, was everything she had ever wanted. Not the big house or the successful ranch or the material comforts, though those were nice. But this feeling of being loved and cherished and safe, this feeling of being home. The years continued to pass, bringing both joys and challenges. Benjamin turned 18 in 1894 and announced that he wanted to work the ranch full-time with his father rather than going away to school. Aaron was clearly pleased, though he made sure Benjamin understood it was his choice and his alone. Samuel, at 16, was still undecided about his future, torn between his love of horses and a budding interest in veterinary medicine. Rose, at 12, was blossoming into a beautiful young woman with her mother's skill for sewing and her father's head for business. Clara watched her children grow with a mixture of pride and melancholy. Where had the time gone? It seemed like just yesterday that Benjamin was a tiny baby in her arms, and now he was taller than Aaron and starting to think about finding a wife of his own. But through it all, the one constant was Aaron. He was still the same kind, steady man she had fallen in love with all those years ago in Valentine, though there was silver in his hair now and lines around his eyes from years of squinting into the prairie sun. He still looked at her like she was the most precious thing in his world, still kissed her good night every evening, and told her he loved her every morning. One afternoon in the spring of 1895, Clara was in the kitchen making bread when Aaron came in from the barn. He had an odd expression on his face, something between amusement and nostalgia. "I was just cleaning out some old boxes in the barn," he said, "and I found something I thought you might want to see." He held out a small leather bag, worn and cracked with age. Clara recognized it immediately. It was the bag she had been carrying the day she arrived in Valentine, the one that had contained everything she owned in the world. "I had forgotten about this," Clara said, taking it with trembling hands. She opened it carefully and pulled out the contents. A few coins, a spare dress, a small daguerreotype of her parents, and a folded piece of paper that she did not remember being there. She unfolded the paper and saw that it was a certificate of live birth for Benjamin, filled out by the midwife who had delivered him. But what caught Clara's eye was the line for the father's name. There, in Aaron's strong, steady handwriting, was written simply, "Aaron Williams." Clara looked up at her husband with tears in her eyes. "You changed it," she whispered. "I did," Aaron said, coming to stand beside her. "About a week after Ben was born, I went to the courthouse and had the records amended. I wanted it to be official that he was mine, that we were a real family." "We were always a real family," Clara said, but she understood what he meant. This certificate made it legally binding, made Benjamin his son not just in their hearts but in the eyes of the law. "I love you," Clara said, throwing her arms around Aaron's neck. "I love you so much." "I love you too," Aaron replied, holding her close. "Always have, always will." That evening, Clara called Benjamin in from the barn and showed him the birth certificate. He was 17 now, almost a man, but when he saw his father's name written there, tears spilled down his cheeks. "You are my father in every way that counts," Benjamin said to Aaron, his voice thick with emotion. "You raised me, you taught me everything I know, you loved me when you did not have to. I am proud to be your son." Aaron embraced Benjamin tightly, and Clara saw that he was crying too. "I am the one who is proud," Aaron said. "You have grown into a fine young man, Ben, and I could not love you more if you had been mine from the start." The moment was interrupted by Samuel and Rose bursting into the room, demanding to know what was happening and why everyone was crying. When they learned the story, they both wanted to see the certificate too, marveling over the proof of their father's love for their eldest brother. Later that night, after the children had gone to bed, Clara and Aaron sat on the porch of the big house, looking out over the ranch they had built together. The moon was full, casting silver light over the prairie, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. "You ever regret it?" Clara asked softly. "Taking us in that day, your life would have been so much simpler if you had just let me find someone else to help me." Aaron turned to look at her, his blue eyes still as clear and honest as they had been the day they met. "Never," he said firmly. "Not for a single second. You and the children are the best thing that ever happened to me, Clara. My life before you was empty. You filled it with love and laughter and purpose. How could I ever regret that?" "I am just so grateful," Clara said, tears slipping down her cheeks. "For you, for our family, for all of this. Sometimes I still cannot believe it is real." "It is real," Aaron assured her, taking her hand. "And it is ours. We built this together, you and me, and it is going to be here for our children and our grandchildren and everyone who comes after us. This is our legacy, Clara. Not the ranch or the house, but the love we have for each other and the family we created." They sat together in the moonlight, hands clasped, watching the stars wheel overhead. And Clara thought about the journey that had brought her here, from that terrified pregnant woman stumbling into a saloon to the contented wife and mother she was now. It had not been easy, and there had been moments when she thought she would not survive. But she had, and more than that, she had thrived. She had found love and safety and a place to belong. She had found Aaron. As the years continued to pass, the Williams family remained close and loving. Benjamin eventually married a young woman from town named Sarah, and they gave Aaron and Clara their first grandchildren, twin boys born in 1897. Samuel did go away to study veterinary medicine, but he returned to Valentine afterward and set up a practice that served all the ranches in the area. Rose grew into a beautiful young woman and eventually married a banker from Omaha, though she visited the ranch often with her own children. Aaron and Clara grew old together on the ranch, watching their children and grandchildren play in the same spaces where they had raised their own family. Aaron's hair turned completely white, and Clara needed spectacles to do her needlework, but they were still deeply in love, still partners in every sense of the word. One evening in the summer of 1912, when Clara was 62 and Aaron was 61, they sat on the porch of the big house watching the sunset. It was a ritual they had maintained for over 30 years, and it still brought them the same peace and contentment it always had. "We have had a good life, have we not?" Clara said, leaning her head on Aaron's shoulder. "The best," Aaron agreed. "Better than I ever dreamed possible." "Do you remember the day we met?" Clara asked. "When I walked into that saloon looking half dead?" "I remember," Aaron said. "I remember thinking you were the bravest person I had ever seen. Pregnant and alone and terrified, but still fighting for your child and yourself. I knew right then that you were someone special." "I thought you were going to send me away," Clara admitted. "I could not believe it when you offered me work and a place to stay. You saved my life that day, Aaron." "And you saved mine," Aaron replied. "I was just going through the motions before you came along, working the ranch, eating, sleeping, starting over again the next day. But you taught me what it meant to really live, to really love. You gave me a family and a purpose and more happiness than any one man deserves." Clara felt tears prick at her eyes, but they were happy tears. She thought about everything they had been through together, all the joys and sorrows and everyday moments that had made up their life. She thought about the children they had raised and the grandchildren who now ran through the house that Aaron had built for them. She thought about the love that had sustained them through everything, a love that had only grown stronger with the passing years. "I love you," she said, the same words she had spoken thousands of times before, but which never lost their meaning. "I love you too," Aaron replied, kissing her forehead. "Today, tomorrow, and forever." They sat together as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the prairie sky in shades of gold and crimson and violet. And Clara felt a profound sense of peace, knowing that this was exactly where she was meant to be. In Aaron's arms on their ranch, surrounded by the family they had built together. She had started her journey in fear and desperation, but she was ending it in love and contentment. And that, she thought, was the greatest gift of all. The ranch continued to thrive under Benjamin's management, with Samuel providing veterinary care and Rose visiting often with her growing family. Aaron and Clara became the beloved matriarch and patriarch of not just their own family but the entire community, known for their generosity and kindness, and the enduring love they had for each other. They celebrated their 35th wedding anniversary in 1913 with a huge party attended by what seemed like half of Nebraska. Their children and grandchildren surrounded them, and Aaron stood up to make a toast, his voice still strong despite his years. 35 years ago, I met a woman in a saloon in Valentine, he began, and everyone laughed. She was running from a terrible situation, carrying a child and scared out of her mind. But she was also the bravest, strongest person I had ever met. I asked her to marry me after knowing her for just a few months, and she said yes. Best decision I ever made. He turned to Clara, his blue eyes still as bright and loving as they had been on their wedding day. You have made every day of my life an adventure, Clara Williams. You have given me 3 amazing children and more grandchildren than I can count. You have filled my home with love and my heart with joy. And I would do it all again in a heartbeat, every single moment, just to have you by my side. Clara was crying openly now, and so were most of the women in the room. She stood up and embraced Aaron, holding him tight as everyone applauded. I would do it all again, too, she whispered in his ear. Every single moment. Aaron and Clara Williams lived to see their golden wedding anniversary in 1928, surrounded by their children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. They had witnessed incredible changes over the course of their marriage, from the end of the Wild West era through the modern age of automobiles and airplanes. But through it all, their love had remained constant, a beacon of hope and strength for everyone who knew them. When Aaron passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1930 at the age of 79, Clara was holding his hand, just as she had held it for over 50 years. She whispered that she loved him as he took his last breath, and she knew that wherever he was going, he would be waiting for her. Clara lived for another 5 years, spending her time with her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, telling them stories about the old days and the man she had loved with all her heart. She told them about arriving in Valentine with nothing but a small leather bag and a baby on the way. She told them about Aaron offering her work and a place to stay, about him promising to raise her son as his own. She told them about falling in love and building a life together on the Nebraska prairie. And when Clara died peacefully in the spring of 1935 at the age of 85, her last words were simply, "I am coming, Aaron. Wait for me." They buried her beside him in the small cemetery outside Valentine, under a cottonwood tree that Aaron had planted when they first bought the ranch. The headstone reads simply, "Clara Williams, beloved wife, mother, and grandmother, together forever." The ranch stayed in the family for generations, passed down from Benjamin to his children and then to their children. And every generation heard the story of how it all began, with a pregnant woman fleeing from a cruel man and a cowboy who looked at her and saw not shame or scandal, but someone worth loving. They heard about the promise Aaron made that day in the cabin, the words that changed everything. "I will raise it as my own." It was a story of courage and kindness, of love conquering fear, of family being more than just blood. It was a story that reminded everyone who heard it that sometimes the greatest gifts in life come from the most unexpected places, and that true love is about choosing each other every single day, through good times and bad. And on summer evenings, when the sun set over the Nebraska prairie in shades of gold and pink. The descendants of Aaron and Clara Williams would sit on the porch of the big house and feel the presence of their ancestors in the warm breeze. They would think about the legacy of love that had been passed down to them, and feel grateful for the courage of a woman who had refused to give up and the kindness of a man who had seen past her circumstances to the person she really was. The story of Aaron and Clara Williams became a legend in Valentine, Nebraska, told and retold until it became woven into the very fabric of the town. It was a reminder that love could triumph over adversity, that families could be built on foundations of choice and commitment rather than just biology, and that sometimes the bravest thing a person could do was to trust again after being betrayed. Their love story endured long after they were gone, inspiring generations to believe in the possibility of second chances and happily ever afters. And in the hearts of everyone who heard their tale, the words Aaron spoke that day in the cabin continued to resonate, a promise that transcended time and circumstance. I will raise it as my own. It was a promise that Aaron had kept every day of his life, not just to Benjamin but to Clara as well. He had raised them both from the ashes of Clara's old life, given them a home and a family and a love that lasted a lifetime. And in doing so, he had created something beautiful and enduring, a legacy that would continue on for generations to come. The end.